Okay, let's get to the hot news first. The news that Donald Trump is running in 2024. Hey, that came out during the week in an interview. Check out what Donald said when asked about that decision on whether he's going to run or not.
Well, I think I'm just looking at what's going on. I'm very unhappy with what's going on. I look at the border where people are coming in by the millions. It's going to be by the millions very soon. It already is. And I look at other things, how our country is really, it's America last. I was America first. I look at it and I see what's happening, and I'm not happy about it. So we'll make that decision, and I think people will be very happy with the decision I make.
I know.
What did you just say, Donald?
So we'll make that decision, and I think people will be very happy with the decision I make.
I know.
And that's about as close as you can get to saying you're running in 2024 without actually saying it. People are going to be very, very happy with the decision he makes. I'm sure they will. So why playing so coy? Because he's waiting for the outcome in Arizona, where a forensic examination to a criminal evidentiary standard, which will put some people in the slammer, is taking place in Arizona, and Donald Trump's biding his time and waiting for the right moment. Meanwhile, he's just starting up the rallies again. It's Donald Trump light as he just ticks over the Republican base in anticipation of that outcome in Arizona. The full outcome will take some time, but we will have interim results within days. And that will be the beginning of the challenge to not just Arizona but many other states, to the fall of the Democratic Party in 2022, losing the House disastrously because of a resurgent grassroots Republican activist base, which will get out there and win the election even more comprehensively than they won the last one before the steal. And so it's all looking good. But of course, we're in the eye of the storm right now, as we not just wait for the result in Arizona, but also as we wait for the elite behind this global massacre to consider their next move. Because they got to decide whether they're going to double down or cut their losses. And you see, you can't really proceed with this campaign they're on, which has already failed, thanks to the efforts of those who brought the truth out on the internet, despite their best efforts. But you can't proceed if you've lost to the United States, because a Donald Trump breathing down your neck again is definitely what you don't need if you're going. So really, it's coming push to shove. It's either double down or else it's cut your losses. There's other stuff happening too. And what's happening is really the reason why you want to bother your ass watching me. Because this is what I've been talking about. And if you analyze this, you can tell where we're at. You see, the advantage I think I have is that I've been there 20 years and more before. So when people talk about Kary Mullis and the PCR test and how it can't be used in order to diagnose COVID, the same arguments I personally quoted 20 years or more ago as a member of the AIDS dissident movement, questioning the use of PCR tests in HIV/AIDS. So yeah, I know the feeling when you're just saying, hey, Kary says that this isn't even kosher. Because I've said it, I've been there on the HIV/AIDS issue. So that gives me a perspective and understanding, and of course in the interim, many other things too, but it gives me that perspective. And if you haven't fully grasped this perspective, this is really why you should bother your ass, because still I'm the only one talking about this. Among the conspiracy media, alternative media, everyone's talking about how bad Fauci is now, but he's Mr. HIV/AIDS. And that now gives us an understanding of where we're at. Because AIDS, 9/11 and COVID-19 are and were the three major global fear operations in the last 40 years. But there's a trend which is very disturbing for the establishment in that sequence. Yeah, back at the time of HIV/AIDS, all I got for my trouble was to be called an arch conspiracy theorist by the South African Mail and Guardian for my views on HIV/AIDS and research and writing on 9/11. But at that time, it was easy to get away with dismissing those who questioned HIV/AIDS, and although there were perhaps up to 20,000 individuals involved, with maybe 1,000 decent credentialed scientists involved in the AIDS dissident movement, questioning the use of the test, questioning the medications, just like we're questioning the quality and efficacy of the vaccines right now, it was nevertheless a small number. It was a small number. By their second fear operation, which was 9/11, it wasn't just a small number questioning that. No, that was and did go mainstream and had to be fought with propaganda campaigns, and also fought by inserting the most dire, absolute, utter rubbish into the controlled 9/11 conspiracy media to give every question about 9/11 a really bad name because of the ridiculous theories that were advanced. That was deliberate, but nevertheless that required an intensive campaign to fight off, and they had it covered because they didn't just infiltrate the 9/11 movement, they were the 9/11 truth movement, setting all its talking points, controlling what it looked at and what it thought. But that was a large cohort of people who didn't buy that. Huge numbers of both Democrat and Republican voters in the United States did not buy it. And then we come to COVID-19, and now this time it isn't just a tiny number, it isn't a modest number, now it's a vast number of people all around the planet are questioning this, their third fear operation, which is in the medical arena and should really have been the kind of solid ground they could have relied on general ignorance of scientific medical issues to safeguard them and get everyone to just rely on their authority. Hasn't worked out, has it? So 1, 2, 3, and each time they ran a big fear operation, the resistance is bigger. This time there is a future presidential candidate who is questioning. So Trump has played along because he has to for political reasons. You need the votes of Democrats, centrists, as well as GOP, and you can't afford to alienate those. So Trump will always lead from behind on the questions around COVID and its origins. You can expect that. But he knew well Fauci was his deadly enemy when Fauci stood beside him in the White House. He knew his enemies had engineered Fauci in. He played the game. He gave people what they wanted. You want vaccines? Here's vaccines. That's the game that's been played. But for them, this has been the worst fear operation they've ever run in terms of blowback. So, maybe it's because I was there and wore the T-shirt that I'm connecting those dots, but I'm still surprised that they haven't been connected by others, because it's just obvious when you look at it that way. But that was back when. It was 27th of April 2020. I put that out about the Psy-war aspect of all this. It was on how the deep state pulled off the Wuhan up. That was 3rd of May, where I was highlighting Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance and all that stuff that's come out in the intro. But again, it just took so long, and even now people talk about questions about lab leaks, etc., when Dr. Stephen Quay, whom I've been in correspondence with, has definitively established that this was a biological weapons release. But back then, in 3rd of May 2020, I was highlighting Ellen Shednars, who's chair of EcoHealth Alliance. Now, EcoHealth and Daszak and Fauci's connections to them are all over the media right now, but I still see no mention of Ellen, who is no longer chair, by the way. She's stepped down, even though it's still on her LinkedIn that she's the chair. But in fact, she's not the chair of the board of directors. She's just on the board now as Ellen. By the way, their funding has collapsed from $15 million a year of government contracts to latest figure 7, which is half that figure. I wonder if that's affected bonuses at EcoHealth Alliance. But what attracted me, before I go on to Stephen Donnelly, the Irish health minister there, initially about her, was her background in McKinsey and Company, which is a CIA front. So the minute I saw that, oh, hello. And I don't know if everybody knows that McKinsey is a CIA front. It just shows you, really, people need to do more research Otherwise, you're just wandering around the dark. It's great those who have done it, including freepress.ie, who identified the McKinsey link in the Irish Health Minister, Stephen Donnelly. And another piece of information in their article released since my focus on McKinsey is that Stephen Donnelly worked for McKinsey and Boris Johnson was his last client when he worked for McKinsey. That's what he told the Irish Times in November 2017. Very interesting, considering that Boris Johnson is the British Prime Minister who has, despite appearing like he was a man of the people and on their side against the nanny state, took away their liberties, didn't he? Interesting connection there to McKinsey and Boris Johnson through Irish Health Minister Donnelly. This is the kind of connections which I, as I say, seeded off over a year ago now, and I wish more people could catch up on that, because it's going quite slowly. But nevertheless, we are patient. We are in the eye of the storm. More and more stuff is coming out. And Fauci, by the way, is being thrown under the bus, but that's part of the plan. But nevertheless, besides all that, here he is being thrown under the bus, and Gates has already gone under the bus. Matt Hancock in the UK also thrown under the bus, the health minister there. But here's Fauci, nevertheless, going under the bus. Jim Jordan is absolutely. Here's this scientific publication, The Proximal Origins of SARS-CoV-2. See the authors there? Christian Anderson, Edward Holmes, and Bob Gary. Those three, in private correspondence with Fauci, said as far as they could see this thing was engineered. Then Fauci arranged a big conference call and then arranged for an article to be published in the scientific press, where these guys who had privately told him this thing looks engineered then said in public in this article, nah, it wasn't engineered. But Fauci's paws are all over this. This is interesting. Here's the coup de grace being delivered here now by Jim Jordan.
And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. When the article is published, Dr. Fauci cites it at a White House press conference when he is asked by a reporter about the origin of the virus. Cites the very article he put in motion on the conference call and he was allowed to edit. At the White House, where he's supposed to be giving the American people the truth, he references an article that he manufactured. Now, maybe I'm wrong about all this. Maybe it didn't work out this way. I think I'm right. Maybe it didn't work out this way. But it would have been nice, Mr. Chairman, if Dr. Fauci would come today and answer our questions. He could have come here and defended himself, but he didn't have the courage to do it. And you know who else wouldn't come? Remember that email about the P3 framework? We invited Dr. Hassel to come too. He's the individual who chairs that oversight board. We invited him to come today too, and he wouldn't come. I'm convinced these guys knew right from the get-go what the truth was, and they misled the American people. Oh, here's the other thing. You know that conference call? That conference call? We got the emails regarding the conference call from February 2nd. All these guys were emailing back and forth. They were on that conference call. Here's what we got on the FOIA request. Here's all their emails. Every single thing is redacted. Every single thing is redacted about what took place in that conference call, because I'm convinced it was at that conference call where they said, we got to cover our tracks.
Now, the plan is anyway that Fauci would always take heat on this. That's the plan. Should have kept a better eye on it, should have been more careful, etc. The oversight should have been better, etc. And this would be portrayed as that sloppy practices and procedures in the lab in Wuhan are the consequence was an escape. So, and that's always going to be muddy waters that you can never nail down whether it was the American end or the Chinese end of this thing. This is how they made sure nobody double-crossed each other, because they're both in it together, you see. It was constructed so that neither could subsequently blame the other, because they're both in it. But then similarly, the public could never achieve the proof either. So Fauci being the focus is not accidental. Nevertheless, they are not in control of the narrative. So the question of exactly how much truth comes out on this is an open one. What's also a worrying development from their point of view is Google being directly linked now to that work going on in Wuhan lab by funding Daszak. Peter Daszak, whom I highlighted a year ago, it's now coming out Google had funded him thanks to National Pulse. So, the control of the narrative is slipping away from them. And that's why it's a very panicked move, it seemed to me, that Google removed this video in the last, just about a week ago, with Dr. Robert Malone, Brett Weinstein and Steve Kirsch. And by the way, they're taking that show onto Odyssey, where I am. Remember, you can get my shows on YouTube. 6th of July is when my 2 strikes ban expires. And so therefore I've had to not talk about certain topics. I don't want to lose the channel, but I'm on Odyssey and I'm going to be doing more and more on Odyssey, just waiting for the live streaming on Odyssey, frankly, to make the move there. It's not widely available, but they're making the move already to Odyssey. Google is losing it. There's going to be a departure of intellectuals off of Google's platforms and YouTube. So good news there. But a despairing move to have to pull that interview. I linked to the full interview, which is on Odyssey, which if you're of a medical background, you should definitely check out. It's about 2.5, 3 hours. Absolutely revealing. Confirming your deepest suspicions if you're well informed about the desperate state to which medicine has descended and is part of our revolution, folks, to overthrow that. And that focus on Google and what YouTube will and won't allow to be shown brings us neatly to the third thing, which is the current point in time. Remember, I was saying we're at 3 points now. We're at their swan song, increasing resistance to their fear operations over the last 40 years, and this time to a terminal level of skepticism, I believe, in the end. Secondly, we're in the eye of the storm right now, at this particular moment in time, in that process, as everyone considers their next options, and we wait for Arizona and other developments to follow. But we're also at a point in time where we're about to see populist left and populist right meet in a new populist centre, or shall we say, construct a new agreed populist centre. Now I say populist left as opposed to progressive left, because the progressive left is an artificial construction created by money and propaganda. But it was the populist left which was the original Occupy. And it's the populist left and centre who are behind the apes on Wall Street, who are taking down the hedge funds. That's populist left and centre. And a signal of that, Steve Bannon's well aware of this. Another person I pay close attention to in research is Steve Bannon, as well as Donald Trump. And Bannon has realised that it's now time to form that new populist centre. And as a result, he has begun to speak to people like, say, Naomi Wolf and have them on his show, who's not exactly on the right of the political spectrum, get it? But then going further and speaking with Tim Pool. Tim Pool, who, if you don't know, you're about to see him, and he is a very popular centre/left, populist left blogger with a huge audience, including 500,000 views on this. And this changed people's minds in the populist left about the populist right when they saw this interview with Steve Bannon. Take it away, Steve.
At some point in time, I don't believe in the total free flow of capital outside the United States, right? Because otherwise you say, oh, you're going to increase taxes on the wealthy, you're just going to take all their money out of the United States. If you do it with these corporations, you're going to take, well, hey, hang on. If you're domiciled here and you live with the blessings of liberty that are provided by working class and middle class people, that provide the substrate of civic society, and provide the security, not just the police officers and the EMTs and the nurses, but the military and these veterans and these active duty people all over. If you have the blessings of liberty, you got to put a little something in the pot, okay? And it shows you the scam. The $25 billion. That's where you know. And it's Merrick Garland. I think here the scam is. U.S. investigates, this is the page of the Financial Times from the other day. U.S. investigates leak of records showing billionaires pay tax hikes. It's not investigating the billionaires or why they're not paying the taxes. The number one thing, this is U.S. That was Merrick Garland, Joe Biden. So all you guys have voted for Biden, embrace this. Don't give me your populism and how you're going to do this and you're going to do that. This is what you voted for.
Yeah.
And so when the billionaires, the 24 billionaires have paid under $15 billion in taxes over 5 years, okay, the number one thing Merrick Garland and Joe Biden wants to do is find out who leaked the records.
And you're saying that's just taxes on the books, right?
Exactly. That's taxes on the books.
All right.
So we don't have anything. But so, yes, I'm not a libertarian. I don't believe in the total free flow of capital throughout the world. I think there has to be some constraints on it, and you have to think of the national good and the good of the nation. And I certainly don't believe in the free flow of labor, because that only helps to impoverish citizens.
Brian Nola says, first time hearing Bannon speak, the media completely lied. He's incredibly intelligent, and I couldn't agree with him more. I'll be seeking his podcast out. Bravo, good sir.
Thank you.
I think it's fairly obvious, like, all the media about you was just the most ridiculous lies. Like, far-right, authoritarian, white supremacist was, like, the most insane things. Because
I'm pretty far right. But I'm a populist. I'm a nationalist.
But what does that mean, being far-right?
I don't agree. I don't agree with this kind of middle ground where you're going to, I think that somebody has to stand up for the working class people in this country.
But see, the thing is, when you're talking about left and right, you have to figure out where your definitions are. Are you talking about the political compass? Are you talking about the there were like 4 different left and right spectrums 10 years ago. There was left in terms of hierarchy and right in terms of anarchy. It was like very strange how people were defining left and right. So typically in the political compass, far right just means free market. That doesn't mean anything other than that. And then authoritarian right means, like, I guess, ideological control with a pseudo free market. It's very strange how people define what left and right means these days. When you say you're very much in favor of defending the working class, the left argues that's far left.
Except I don't see their policies doing that. But first off, the first thing you say, are you open borders? Are you for open borders? If you're open borders, you're destroying. All you're doing is putting the most intense competition against the people least able to defend themselves, and that's the working class. You're
And so a terrible beauty is born. United by their shared loathing of an elite which has played them for saps for decades, we are about to see the creation of that new centre. As you saw in that discussion there, I started to think, what does left mean? What does right mean? Exactly? Much of this means nothing. What means is, whose side are you on in these critical times? And we're going to see unity. So the whole landscape is about to shift, and it's about time. But also it means that there's a future which is going to open up in ways that I think people probably don't expect, as old certainties are about to completely ebb away. Old certainties are about to dissipate. This is a transforming event at the appropriate and correct transformative moment. I say bring it on. It's very lucky that they tried this on when they did and at that moment of weakness. For acting in weakness, not in strength, they've exposed themselves. And people like Steve Bannon are queuing up now to create that new political future. A very astute move, and one which will determine our future, I believe. The key thing you have to remember has already taken place. The key thing is that the grassroots have recovered control of one of the 2 political parties in the United States. The Republican Party, through the actions of ordinary people at a precinct level, taking control of the party in response to this outrageous steal by the establishment, has restored control of that party to the grassroots. They now call the shots, and they buy into Donald Trump. And so that's just a reality. They've lost one of the 2 parties. When you control both parties in a 1-2 party state, you can do whatever you like. Those days are over, and a grand political realignment is about to take place as the existing shattered, weak, disjointed, disunited, blundering Democratic Party is about to be savaged from both sides of the political spectrum. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the future. Sometimes it's painful, but you reach a moment, and we're in that moment, where you see a new dawn because of all the shit that we've put up with over the last year and a half since this thing first emerged. And it's a union of that nationalist focused sentiment in people to look after country and community, and that thirst for justice, equity and reform which has characterized progressive left. And a grand union is emerging. I'll be back with more on a more focused look toward our own opposition. I've been doing some work on a publishing project which I'll announce as soon as we're in a position to announce that, to actually create a platform which can get alternative views out now as we build alternative media in response to their attempts to shut us down on the media they have controlled. So more on that, and as I say, a closer look at individuals, including Rainer Fulmisch and some of the things he's been saying recently. This is the lawyer who's taking the PCR test into court to challenge it. I want to take a look at some of the stuff that's been, some of the developments that have taken place over the summer, which I've been following, and bring them to you. And also I'll be doing a video today as well for our Trump punters, those who have followed the legal brief which I drafted up and was used as a template by hundreds of people to challenge the loss of their stake in the recent election when Betfair decided to close the market on the 14th of December instead of waiting to see who would be the president on the 6th of January. So I'm doing an update video on that. And as I say, more videos just examining some of the developments which have taken place over the last month or so. That's upcoming. But I'll leave you with this one, which is an examination of that sentiment, that emerging sentiment in many countries, as people begin to realize that this is the time when they have to battle for that which they love, the life which they loved, the old normal, and in fact a better version of the old normal. I am crossing the Delaware River in the dark, and I'm declaring independence with my mark. For I am everything that rises to be free. There, when two are gathered making three. I am high up in the clouds and underground. I am everywhere and nowhere to be found. For I'm boundless, yet I'm bound to take a stand. For my hearth, my home, my country, and my land. I'll be back soon. Hope you can join me for that. But in the meantime, for informed consent and breakfornews.com, this has been Fintan Dunne reporting. Thanks for joining me.